What's going on, Trade Pros? This is Mark from Trade Pro Academy, and in this weekend's video, I'm going to be discussing how we can deal effectively with trading mistakes. We'll roll the intro and get right into it after. All right, Trade Pros. So, how do we deal effectively with mistakes? All right, it should come as no surprise that we're human, all right? Unless you're not human, maybe you might not make mistakes. But if you're a human being and you plan on trading, we are gonna be making mistakes. It comes with the territory. That's just the reality of it. Now, what is going to determine whether you stick around in this industry for a while or whether you just make a quick exit is how you deal with these mistakes. Now, the reality is, in this industry, when we make a mistake, that comes at the cost of money, all right? And a lot of people have emotional connections with money that they might not even be aware of, all right? And so today we're gonna be discussing some of the common mistakes that traders do make as it relates to execution. We're gonna be talking about some of the catalysts that lead to those execution errors. And finally, we're gonna be giving you guys some strategies on how professionals approach dealing with mistakes effectively. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one. What are some of the most common execution errors? All right, number one, fat fingering trades. All right, fat fingering trades simply means putting on a bigger size than you were originally intending to do. All right, and I've had this experience. I can say probably many other traders have had this experience. Fat fingering trades is never fun, but as soon as you realize that you've put on more than you should have, the way that I've kind of dealt with that in the past is to cut it right away. All right, so fat fingering is number one. Let's say you're looking to put on maybe 2 contracts and you end up putting on, say, 5 or 6 contracts, thereby throwing off your risk management, your whole game plan. Right, and it's how you adapt to those. So fat fingering is probably the most common execution error. A second quite common execution error is keyboard shortcuts, also known as hotkeys. All right, this is something that happened to me very early on in my futures trading career. I remember I had a hotkey that was set as the same thing that essentially let me pan in and out of my charts. And so I remember one morning pre-market, I was doing some charting of my zones on the NASDAQ, and I was trying to expand the charts, and my charts weren't expanding, but my DOMs on the next screen over were showing that I was entering short. And so I effectively built up a short of around 5 contracts on the NASDAQ pre-market as this thing was catching somewhat of a bid. So as soon as I realized that, I closed that trade out right off the bat, started the day off in the red. But the lesson I took from that was make sure, number one, that you've got hotkeys enabled, and number two, that those hotkeys are not something similar to what you use for maybe a different purpose. Okay, so that is a common second one, hotkey errors. And number 3 is a common one, and it's got to do kind of like with errors with the mouse. All right, so it comes with no surprise. If you're gonna be trading manually, you're gonna be moving the mouse on, putting on limits, canceling the limits. Quite oftentimes we make execution errors. I've had it in the past where instead of moving up my stop by accident, I cancel it. Little things like that that can result in lost capital, but how we deal with it is very, very important. So those are the 3 most common types of execution errors. Just to reiterate, those are fat fingering trades. Number 2, hotkey shortcuts. Number 3, errors with the mouse. And I guess number 4, you can also add, not quite as common, but sometimes it does hit people. And that's thinking that you are in sim, but actually being in live, and vice versa. It doesn't hurt as much if you think you're in live, but you're in sim and you're down on the day. But let me tell you, if you think you're in sim, but you're in live and you're not having a good day, that really does hurt. And it really depends on how you can bounce back from those kinds of errors. All right, so now that we know the most common types of errors, let's go ahead and discuss some of the catalysts that lead up to making these errors. So first and foremost, number 1, mental fatigue. That's a big one. Mental fatigue, if you wake up tired, if you didn't get good sleep, if you're not hydrated, if you don't have enough rest, you're probably not coming in with the best mind space, with the best mental space to be trading. And oftentimes, if you're coming in with that mental fatigue, you are more vulnerable to make these kinds of mistakes. All right. Another big catalyst that has to do with these execution errors is distractions. All right. If you're sat at home and you're looking to put on a trade and maybe your kids run into the room, jump on the keyboard, whatever it may be, that's not really the right type of environment. And that is also something that can lead to execution errors. Now, it doesn't have to be kids. It could be, a cat or a dog, whatever it is. Distractions can and will lead to these kinds of errors. So we want to try to minimize those types of distractions. Okay, another common catalyst that leads to execution errors is not being prepared. Can also word this differently in the sense of not following your morning routine. Okay, and so, there's an analogy that kind of goes along the lines of failing to plan is planning to fail. And so that kind of, holds its weight in this industry as well. If you are used to a morning routine whereby before you even sit at your trading station, you do meditations, you do journaling, you do affirmations, cold showers, exercise, whatever is part of your morning routine, if you don't do that leading up to the session, right? If you just wake up and on a whim, get over to your desk, the market opens up, you're not prepared to be trading. And that also leaves you vulnerable to making mistakes. So again, a big catalyst is failing to be prepared and or not following your morning routine. That's a really big one. If you don't do that, make sure that morning routine is done and in place before you even sit down. And number 4, the fourth type of catalyst comes as it relates to inexperience, all right, or a lack of execution skills. Now, what this simply means is not being familiar enough with the platform, not being familiar enough with the DOM, the depth of market, where you're putting on those orders, not really knowing really everything that can go wrong. And we kind of say here at TradePro Academy, you should be in demo environment as long as it takes until you can click something on the platform and it doesn't surprise you what it does. All right, so oftentimes what we tell our traders here is that demo period should be specifically meant to acclimate yourself with the platform. Learn how to put on entries, learn how to cancel entries, learn how to attach an order to a bracket that might have been broken. Okay, a lot of different things here, but those are your 4 main catalysts as it relates to making these kinds of execution errors. Those are mental fatigue, distractions, not having a plan, and having a lack of execution skills. So now that we are familiar with the most common types of execution errors, as well as the catalysts that lead to them, what can we do to deal with mistakes effectively? Or what can we do to deal with trading mistakes more effectively, I should say? All right, there's 2 types of strategies, and they can be broken down into preventative strategies and recovery strategies. So as the names imply, preventative strategies are those you put in place to prevent yourself from making these mistakes. Recovery strategies are those strategies you have in place in the event that the preventative strategies don't work out and you still find yourself making an execution error. So let's discuss those now. All right, guys, so there's generally 4 types of preventative strategies that you can use in order to help yourself try to prevent making these kinds of execution errors. All right, now again, we are human, so we're not going to eliminate 100% of these errors, but following these 4, types of approaches, you can best give yourself the best chance to minimize the chance of these occurring. So the first type of thing is maintain energy. All right, you're gonna wanna maintain energy. What does that mean? Well, you wanna make sure you get good sleep. All right, you wanna make sure you get good nutrition. You wanna make sure you're well hydrated. All right, those are the key things: rest, nutrition, and hydration. All right, you don't wanna be in the middle of a trade or considering a trade and all of a sudden you're hangry or you're dehydrated. That's going to take away from that, not the consistency, but the focus, the concentration required in order to do this. All right, the second thing that you're going to want to do is to have execution skills in play. All right, so like I mentioned when we were discussing the catalysts, The time that you want to be spending in demo is the time that you are going to be familiarizing yourself with the execution part of your platform, all right? Getting on that DOM, putting on limits, canceling those limits, canceling those limits and getting filled. Maybe even canceling your stop and then putting it back on. Learning how to do all these things is going to help you recover in the event that it does happen, all right? If something happens in real time, you don't want that to be the first time that you're experiencing it. You want to have almost a habit. It wants to be a reflex. This happens, all right, I already know what I'm doing. Okay, so building those execution skills is going to help you prevent making these kinds of mistakes. The next thing that you want to do is have a trading environment, all right, a high performance trading environment where you minimize and ideally completely remove distractions. Okay, make sure you set boundaries. If you're working from home as we are in these COVID times, set those boundaries with your kids, maybe your spouse. Let them know that between 9 and 11 a.m., leave me alone. Don't knock in on the door or ask mom. All right. Sorry for the moms out there. All right. And so on the other hand, as dad, if you're a female trader, we appreciate you guys. Get the kids over to dad while you're trading. Make sure that time is committed to focus and concentration. Really, the final thing as it relates to preventative strategies is making sure your mental capital is in play. So we often talk about this here at TradePro Academy. Mental capital can also kind of be considered like a traffic light system. So this is basically how you feel leading up to the day. If you are feeling, like myself today, for example, I didn't trade. Why is that? Because I went to sleep at 4 and I was up at 7. So I got 3 hours of sleep. My mental capital was not in a place where I'm going to be efficient and, trading the markets well. And so I know that my mental capital today was a red. So I stayed away from trading. All right. And so you should be able to kind of grade yourself on a red light, yellow light, green light basis, which simply means if you're at red, you shouldn't be trading. If you're at yellow, you're not at your best, you're not at your 100%, but you also have some fight in you, all right? So what that would mean if you're in the yellow kind of a situation is maybe on average, if you're green, you take 5 trades. If you're showing up as yellow, you might take 1 or 2 trades, all right? So protecting yourself from that perspective is how you can help prevent some of these execution errors, all right? So just to reiterate, the first of the 2 strategies here, the preventative side, is make sure your mental capital is in check, make sure your energy is maintained, make sure you do not have any distractions, and make sure your execution skills are up to par. And now we're gonna cover the recovery strategies, right? These are the strategies you're gonna put in play if the preventative strategies don't work out for you and you do find yourself making an execution error. All right, guys, so the recovery strategies that you guys can put in play in the event that you do make an execution error, the first thing you're gonna have to do is just accept it. All right, accept full responsibility for what just happened. Don't be pointing fingers. Don't be saying it's because of the markets. Markets are rigged. My broker's going after stops. Just drop all of that. Accept full responsibility. All right, this goes back to living at cause versus living in effect. When you live at cause, when you take responsibility for the circumstances in your life, you have the power to change them. All right, so the first thing you want to do in the event of an execution error is just accept it for what it is and accept responsibility. All right, number 2, breathe. Take a deep breath, all right? There's a 4-7-8 breathing exercise you guys can also do. You can check out what that is on Google, but breathe. Breathing is very important. You can breathe and you can also affirm to yourself, I got this, I got this, all right? That's really the second strategy. The third thing you can do in the event of a execution error, all right? The third thing that you're going to do is you are going to extract the lesson from that mistake. All right, don't be upset about it because you've already accepted responsibility. You've taken that deep breath. You've done a couple of breathing exercises. You've told yourself, you've affirmed to yourself, I got this. All right, number 3 is make sure that you extract the learning lesson from it and then just release that. Release it from your psyche. And what I mean by release it is not, physically like throw it out, but extract the lesson from it and just release any emotional attachment you have to that mistake, all right? Because you don't want to anchor to that mistake. Just release it. You can almost, throw it away if you wish. Some people do that. That's a great way to kind of to get over it. And really the fourth thing you want to do after you have extracted the lesson and released it is to rehearse a successful execution. All right. So what you're going to do in this perspective is you're going to mentally visualize what you're going to do should this mistake ever occur again. All right. Like I mentioned earlier, you never want to be in a position where something is surprising you. All right. You always want to be in a position where you have control of things and you're able to deal with it effectively. And that is really the whole purpose of today's video. All right. So that fourth step in the recovery strategy is to rehearse the successful completion of what you're trying to do. So in my case, just to go back to my example of having those hotkeys and getting short 5 contracts on NASDAQ, before the US Open, I rehearsed the fact that I just disabled my hotkeys, all right? And so I don't have to deal with that in the event that it ever comes up, because it shouldn't, because I've disabled them, okay? So those are the strategies, the 2 different approaches to deal with trading mistakes like a professional trader. Again, your preventative strategies and your recovery strategies. So that's going to be everything for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys found value from this video, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And also, guys, we do have a free trading community that you guys can be a part of. We post our daily analysis in there. We post our trade ideas, and we also post market commentary, as well as breaking down the market driving news and what it can mean for the markets. If you guys want to see what that looks like, join us at community.tradeproacademy.com. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, good luck and good trading. Take care, guys.